When you live in the same place for such a long time, it's just always there. It's like a home base. You know, when you're a kid and you play tag or, you know, King of the Mountain or some, you know, any of those games like that. The whole point is to get back to base, you know, and if you're at the base, you're safe. I'm safe, you know. And I guess I kind of looked at it like that. The driveway's there, and you pull into the driveway the same way you've done 10,000 times, and, you know, there's the porch, and it's just, there you go, you're safe. You're at home base. And it's just kind of comforting to know that you have a place to go. You know, if, God forbid, you had no other place to go, you know, you could always come here. It was just a stabilizing factor, I think, is maybe the best way to say it. You know, a comfort.
Christy and I were born in 1965, and we spent our first few years living in Fort Worth. It must have been in 1969 that Daddy decided to purchase the farm. And we moved out on Easter Sunday, or Easter weekend, I guess, of 1970.
My recollection is that Daddy just wanted a farm. He wanted a place with some land and to go out and live there as opposed to living in town. And he told us more than once that his dream was that it would stay in the family, and if, you know, when Armageddon came, we would have a place to go and at least maybe be able to survive.
$21,000.
$27,500. It was $250 an acre. He showed me the...
Well, when I was going through papers a few weeks ago, I found the contract, the loan paper from the bank, and they borrowed $15,000 from the bank. Katrina said 21, and that's what I remember. I don't remember. Maybe it was 200 an acre.
He told me one time it was 27, because I remember I paid double for my first house what they paid for this place. This entire place with the house.
Yeah, and I remember getting a letter from Mom in college. Wasn't too long before I graduated that they paid off the farm.
Mm-hmm.
So from 70 to 82 or 83. So they paid it off in like 12 or 13 years. It was a shack. It was a 4-room house, completely wooden structure. If you think of pictures you've seen in older books that describe the prairie days and people building completely square houses, it was a completely square house.
And then later they added on, we always called it the addition. We always have 3 bedrooms and a bath. So all the girls had their own bedroom, which was awesome. That was in 76. We moved in 76.
We were 10, 75. I had the last room down there on the corner, and Christy was in the middle. Katrina had the first room right here.
Mother and Daddy were probably more excited than we were.
They probably were. Because for 5 years, a family of five
shared
1 bathroom. So,
which we were grateful for.
I remember the wood being old and like gray. I remember the roof not being in very good shape. I remember the posts on the front porch just looked old, and one corner of the porch was kind of sagging. And I'm sure I didn't think it at the time, but I look back now, it's like my mom must have just really been very brave to have followed him out there into that house.
It was great. I mean, I didn't have anything to compare it to, really. But it was just nice and peaceful, and it was beautiful. You had beautiful trees around, and the greatest thing for me was that I could walk out the back door, and my horses were just about 40 feet away, and so I could ride every day that the weather was good. And so that was the best part of it for me. When I think I was 4 or 5, my dad bought a very, very old quarter horse. And his name was Dandy. and he was the first horse that we owned. And we didn't have a saddle at first, so we learned to ride bareback, which was the best way. My sisters would have been 10 or 11 when we bought him, and we all learned to ride together. And then later we bought a couple of different horses. One was Gypsy, she was an Appaloosa, and then another horse, her name was Silver, even though she was black. And those were our horses, and I rode everywhere. I rode all over the pastures, rode up and down all the roads. I would go through our big pasture and around what is now Grindstone Road and up to the high school and back. So it was probably about a 4 mile circuit, and there was barely any traffic on the roads, so you didn't have to worry.
And we did have a lot of freedom. It was that just nobody lived out there at the time, very few people. So I never remember being afraid, being outside, really ever. Not like there was a danger from people coming by or driving too fast. There were so few people, you could hear the cars coming from miles away. So yeah, the animals were just companions and another reason to be outside, to play with them. And then the horses just gave us an extra measure of freedom. I remember just looking back on it later, I think there was just a lot of confidence that I gained from knowing how to ride a horse and kind of being able to steer it, so to speak, and knowing that there was an animal under you that, you could ask it to do what you needed it to do. And I think I gained a lot of confidence from learning how to ride a horse.
It gave me a place for my imagination, because I could go outside and play, which I did when it was not blazing hot. And I would ride horses and I'd play with the dog and play with the cat. Or it also shaped my work ethic in that we had plenty of chores to do because it's a working farm and ranch, and we had a very big vegetable garden that when I was a kid, it felt like that vegetable garden was 100 acres. It was so huge, and I hated working in the vegetable garden.
It was out behind the house, 50, 75 yards. And at our age, it seemed like just enormous. Looking at it now, it's probably more like a half acre or something.
Well, you can probably get a better view if we come from the fence that runs right here, and then just past this fence, that box area back there. It didn't go all the way to the tree line, but probably where this big tree is here, like there, over to that other fence, and you can't really see.
So the
it from
road
here, but
was
there's a
about
tail.
here.
Huh?
The road was about here.
Yeah, the road was over there where Kara is, but the garden was way back here. And I don't know why we didn't put the garden here, closer to the house.
I hated that garden. I hated that garden. It was out back of the house. And it's, looking back on it now, of course, it was a treasure. I'm supposed to say it helped to build my character and all these things.
There were always things to do. There were always things to do because there were usually always cats. We usually always had a dog, and there were always the cows. We often had to feed the cows before we went to school. So that's why he started teaching us to drive so young. I think we were about 11.
But of course, now I think about it, it's like, wow, that's really amazing. We grew the majority of what we ate, but it was a lot of work. And when you're a little kid in the summer times and you're on summer break from school, you'd much rather watch cartoons or do anything else besides being out in the garden at 7 a.m. But that's what we did. And of course, it taught me to work hard and to be responsible and all those things, which it did. I just didn't like it at the time because I was a kid.
When the Bible talks about planting seeds and things growing and bearing fruit, I really have a picture of what that is and what the Lord means by that. And that you reap what you sow, because you're not going to put corn in the ground and get spinach.
We did go out and do a lot of work, and that was something that was it was a way to honor my mom and my grandma. It was a way to help. What I really got to see was a model of here's what it means to take care of family as the Bible talks about, as God wants us to.
Take a picture of this picture and send it to Daniel, because he was wanting pictures. Trina must have been cold. No jacket. Yeah. I mean, this place was more rural than I remember. Look at that. There's like nothing behind us. So the house, this is the driveway, so the house would have been. Here we go. There's a classic.
Oh, I remember that one.
It's the old red tractor, driving lessons, 74, so we would have been 9.
Yeah.
9.
Yep.
Learning to drive the tractor. But later, this hat got caught under the shredder.
I remember that. Daddy was so upset. This is why we have pictures and scrapbooks and things.
She just revised a lot of the wording that was on here.
Right.
She fixed it where I wouldn't have to come sign it. We paid her every year, but I wouldn't have to come sign every year. Is what
Yeah.
she did.
Yeah. We could just shake on it and that'd be good.
Yeah. You know, I was
CPA might not be happy about that, but.
I told her just like I did y'all. Y'all want me off, just tell me, you know. There wouldn't be no fight or nothing. You know?
Yeah. No.
I don't know that I know the story of how Daddy came to lease the farm to him at some point, but I don't know if it was before he got sick or after he knew that he was sick, but he needed somebody to lease the place to and take care of it, and Tim was the guy. So he's leased it for over 20 years, as near as I can figure.
So did Daddy approach you about leasing the property?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wanted to make sure y'all was taken care of and the place was taken care of.
Yeah. Because he had his first round of cancer right before Brent was born, which was 2001. 2000. Yeah, 2000.
Yeah. No, everything was his deal, and it was, and I told him I'd pay lease. He said, no, this is what you're going to pay is, I guess, just to help. If nobody run cows on it, you'd have to pay a lot of taxes, and I figured he looked at it that way, and
Right.
and I figured maybe he felt like he could trust me.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's been a win for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Tim Carter has been a godsend to our family. Godsend to our family.
And has done a really good job of just taking care of the fences and run his cows, and has really worked to improve the land in the years that he's had it, and we're very grateful for that. I do think some of my fondest memories are when I would take the kids back to the farm, and when they started learning how much there is to be done on a farm and working. And they put in a lot of hours themselves out there, a lot of hours. But they loved their grandmother, and they were most usually glad to help.
And there were just some, there were some sweet times with family. Again, looking back, I do see how much my parents and grandma really cared for me, and I see that as a model in how to love and care for your kids and grandkids.
If there's anything that could be encapsulated by my memories or grandkids' memories with the farm, it's just the connection that we all experienced and the joy and the love that we could all feel from Mimi whenever she just loved us. She loved us so much. And that's something I didn't really understand until later in life. As she got older and as she got sick and she couldn't be at the farm anymore, it made me so much more grateful for the time that we had spent there as kids.
Christmas out there was really special. We would gather around and read the Christmas story and open presents, and the ambiance of that room, that main living room with just the Christmas tree lighting and very dim. We would turn off most of the other lights. That was really special as a young kid.
We had enough room for up to 12 people, though it was tight. All of the 4 bedrooms were filled. Catherine and I would split the sofa couch, and Stephen would sleep on the armchair in the office. But we would make it work. We would host our Christmas there. We would put on little plays, and we would all gather in the living room.
We were out there usually on Christmas Eve, and I remember the Christmas where our parents gave Mimi a golf cart for her to drive around the farm in, which very quickly became the kids' toy whenever we went out there.
And Stephen got old enough to drive. They would play golf cart tag. The kids would hide, and Steve would drive the golf cart and try to find them. And you wanted to be the last one found. So they had tons of places to hide. They loved golf cart tag. And they would ride that thing all over the farm.
One of the traditions that we would have is that Mimi, Rita Kinyon, she would read the Christmas story from Luke before we opened presents. Always made me a little antsy.
They did enjoy that, and I'm really grateful for the tradition that Mom established, because as long as I remember growing up, we would always read the Christmas story. And by that I mean Luke chapter 2. We would always read that before we opened gifts, and would take a minute just to recognize and thank the Lord for all that He'd given, and just to acknowledge that, without Him there wouldn't be Christmas.
But as she got older, she was no longer able to read it. She couldn't hold the focus. She couldn't hold the attention. And so us grandkids would take the Bible from her, and we would read it for her, particularly Stephen, before we opened our presents.
I remember we came out to visit, and it was really nice because I'd never really gotten to be around her a lot. But, we just hung out, and I remember my brother got to learn how to ride and mow with the riding lawnmower. It was nice. And that's like the earliest memory I have of her. And that's really the closest thing I have to like her being her without dementia.
If there's anything I learned about the farm, it's that it holds memories, not just for me, for my mom, for my aunts, for Mimi, for Papa. And those memories are maybe something that I'll never know, but I understand the joy and the sorrow because of the stories that I've heard and the place in which it happened.
I think just trying to communicate to our children through the years, it's not the piece of property. It's really how God used the piece of property. And the legacy that we're handing down to them are the lessons that we learned there. Of learning how to walk with God, spending time with Him, listening to Him, seeing His character displayed in the world around you, and learning to recognize that. And the same values of just diligence and hard work and responsibility, compassion, being a part of a team. Those are the kinds of legacy items, values that we want to pass down to our kids. And say the farm was a small part of that, of the Lord really building those things into our family.
think that it's not just the sweat equity that created an emotional connection to the farm, but it created for me an emotional connection to, like I mentioned earlier, my friends who were doing the same thing. And, and in an even bigger way, people all across the country, who were getting up and working on their farms, whether it's a pig farm or chickens or cattle ranch or whatever it is. It just creates a connection to you're working for something bigger than yourself, and contributing to the needs of your family by working in the garden or fixing the fence so the cows don't get out. I really think it's just that. I mean, it is the memories and the fact that, Mother and Daddy put a lot of what they had into that farm. And their vision for what it could be for our family.
I'll keep the legacy alive by just teaching my kids to honor and take care of God's world and God's creation wherever they are. Because obviously we won't be able to do it right in this spot. But just wherever they are, that they really treasure the creation that's around them and treasure the relationships that are around them.
There will come a day, probably much sooner than we think, rather than later, when we could drive out there, drive past it, and everything will have changed. Maybe somebody, whoever ends up buying it, pulls the house down and builds a new one. It's just not the same. I think I keep circling back around to the gratitude, just being grateful that they chose that place. And recognizing, that it was the Lord's hand, because there was so much we learned out there from people and being in that place and connections we still have to it. So I think just the gratitude for growing up in that environment and Mother and Daddy desiring to make the investment and make the move. For Daddy's sacrifice of driving 90 miles round trip every day for 20-something years. I think we just have to be the gratitude for all the experiences and all the family time, both then and as we grew up and then taking the grandkids back. So, yeah, I'm just grateful because not many people get to grow up that way anymore.
Because it wasn't just a farm, it was another home, and it was well loved for a long time.